Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding the incredibly high-risk world of international market expansion. But, we aren't going to be looking at boring spreadsheets or standard business models today. Instead, we're looking through the lens of literally one of the most intense life-or-death scenarios imaginable, and that is military strategy. The parallels between launching a product in a foreign country and launching a military invasion from the sea are absolutely fascinating. Let's start with a stark historical fact. Landing troops on hostile shores is the absolute hardest maneuver to pull off successfully. It is hands down the most challenging type of military operation on Earth. Just think about the sheer logistics involved for a second. You're operating entirely in the open, moving from a super vulnerable position on the water toward a highly entrenched defensive position on the land. Basically, everything is against you. And the crazy thing, the exact same dynamics are at play when your company decides it's time to cross borders and enter a brand new, highly defensive market. So, to truly understand this, we need to look at the core of an amphibious operation. You're deploying units that are meant for the ground, putting them on landing craft, navigating through totally hostile waters, and then literally fighting your way onto hostile land. The sheer level of synchronization required here is staggering. You've got naval forces, air forces, and ground forces all having to act as one perfectly cohesive unit just to survive the journey and hit the ground running. In the business world, well, this is your logistics, your marketing, and your sales teams trying to operate perfectly in sync while entering unknown, hostile territory.
Okay, let's say you actually make it to the shore. Now what? Well, you face the ultimate priority, which is securing the beachhead. This landing zone has to be rapidly reinforced because an enemy counterattack is pretty much inevitable. You absolutely must maintain a foothold on enemy territory, and you have to do it fast, or else your forces will be driven right back into the sea. There's literally no middle ground here. You either hold the beachhead or you lose the entire operation.
Now, this is where the whole framework gets incredibly interesting. This life-or-death military strategy perfectly mirrors a company exporting to a brand new market. The mechanics are exactly the same. The hostile waters, those are your unfamiliar international trade regulations and cultural barriers. The hostile land, that's a market filled with local competitors who absolutely do not want you there. The strategic framework of a military amphibious operation is the exact same blueprint a company has to use when exporting to a new country. In military terms, you hold the beachhead. In business terms, you secure target market share. An exporting company can't just launch a product and passively wait to see what happens. Just like soldiers have to immediately reinforce their position, an exporter has to rapidly gain sufficient strength in a specific product category. They've got to do this within a new target market and, crucially, within a very specific time frame. Securing a reasonable market share is the exact equivalent of holding that beachhead. But what if things go sideways? What happens if you fail? Well, the threats to an exporter's beachhead are severe. Dominant local rivals are going to launch massive counter-marketing offensives, using their home field advantage to basically wash your operation away. And without a strong foothold, even a minor regional crisis can completely destroy your market presence. You will lose that territory entirely. Which brings us to Section 2, Intelligence Gathering, the prerequisites for market entry. So with the stakes being this incredibly high, how do we avoid being pushed back into the sea before the operation even really begins? You do it through rigorous military-grade preparation. A company that's determined to export to a new market has to execute 3 critical steps of detailed intelligence gathering before ever deploying their resources. Step 1, you must analyze the target market in great detail. Step 2, you have to analyze the product segment. Actually, let me rephrase that. You must deeply analyze the specific product segment you intend to enter. And step 3, you have to understand the competitive conditions on the ground. You cannot launch your landing craft until you have perfect clarity on these 3 fronts. Moving right along to Section 3, Market Terrain, Analyzing the Business Battlefield. The terrain dictates everything, right? Your entire strategy depends on it. And you're generally going to encounter one of 2 distinct competitive battlefields, an oligopoly or perfect competition. Depending on where you land, the status of your rivals will be vastly different, which completely changes the entry strategy you have to deploy to survive. Let's say you land in an oligopoly. Picture this. The territory is heavily guarded by massive competitors. Trying to enter directly through the dominant company's main product segment is literally like launching a frontal assault against a fortified bunker. It burns through your resources and almost always ends in heavy losses. Because of that, your strategy has to adapt. In an oligopoly, you must avoid direct confrontation at all costs. You have to flank them, find a niche, a totally different angle, or an underserved segment. A head-to-head battle right there on the shoreline against an entrenched giant, that is a guaranteed losing strategy for a newly landed exporter. On the flip side, what if you're dropping into perfect competition? Here, there's no single giant. Instead, you've got many companies fiercely vying for market share. And because they are all entirely distracted brawling with each other, your initial landing might actually face a little less immediate resistance. Their attention is divided, so you can kind of sneak onto the beach while they're busy throwing sand at each other. But hold on, there is always a catch. While landing in perfect competition might be easier at first, the intense crossfire creates a massive problem. Your net profitability remains incredibly low. Holding this beachhead becomes a grueling, low-margin war of attrition simply because the market is just too crowded. And that leads us to our final part, Section 4, the Normandy Blueprint, Final Orders for Executives. To truly master this whole concept, our source material actually points us straight to real history. Haluk ÜNALDI states, company executives deciding to enter a new market must carefully study the Normandy landing, which changed the course of World War II. It's kind of wild to think about a modern CEO sitting down to study a World War II invasion, but it perfectly illustrates the flawless execution required for international business expansion. When you look back at operations like Normandy or Cyprus, one lesson becomes crystal clear. Securing the beachhead is the absolute defining factor of success. You are operating against all odds. It requires perfect intelligence, flawless coordination across every single department, and an incredibly aggressive push to solidify your position before the local competition can even react. So here is the ultimate question to leave you with. As you plot your next international expansion, are you truly prepared to hold your beachhead, or will the competition push you right back into the sea? Remember, exporting is not a casual endeavor. It's a full-blown amphibious operation. Make sure your intelligence is completely dialed in, your strategy fits the terrain, and your team is perfectly coordinated to hit the ground running. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.